Welcome to our Topical Perspective programs. Today we have Hardin Tibbs with us. Hardin has been a professional futurist since the early 90s. He helps organizations think about the future as a way to improve their strategy and planning. He's worked on themes such as new technologies, environmental issues, and cultural change. His clients include corporations, government agencies, and non-profits in Europe, the US, and Australasia. So, very warm welcome to you today, Hardin.
Thank you.
There's a lot going on in the world,
It
and
certainly is.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of people that are worried. I mean, I think back to the 60s when we talked about the Aquarian age, and it. I know that the planet Pluto has just gone into Aquarius, and that seems to be for people that we're now in the Aquarian age. So, what does that mean for us? And I wonder, Hardin, if you'd like to say some words about what you see the future and how you see it going.
Okay. Well, I'll take your suggestion of this turning of the ages idea as a starting point, because although that's a somewhat esoteric idea, I think it probably does underlie and help to understand a lot of what's going on. And this idea of the cycle of the equinox of the equinoxes is a 25,000-year cycle. And
Yeah,
you think of things like the Mayan calendar and so on. This is the end of the long count. So this is, in astronomical or astrological terms, this is a very significant moment, or these few years are very, very significant moment. And the best I can understand it, there's a term people are using now, the upshift or the great upshift. And I think in many ways it's this notion that there's some kind of uh, like a shift of gears or a shift of consciousness or something happening for the planet as a whole. And of course, it may be wide, it may be the whole solar system for all we know.
mm-hmm.
But it's a change, a fundamental change underlying human society. And I think it marks or it's a signal for the advent of a new civilization.
Yeah,
But the old civilization may be in decline. You know, this is a diagram I've talked about before on one of your videos. So the old civilization may be in decline, but there's something new coming up. And it depends where you put your attention. If you put your attention on the thing that's going down, then you're going to feel rather depressed. But if you put your attention on the rising culture, as Fritjof Capra called it way back in 1980s, then you're going to feel much more optimistic. So I think the old the old culture and all the things attached to it, the power structures, the way society was organized, the belief structures, and so on, are all kind of dissolving or melting away. You know, people have used this analogy of the chrysalis many times over the years, and you know the metaphor of the chrysalis is the caterpillar goes into the chrysalis, and inside the chrysalis, its entire body structure melts away. All its organs just turn into a kind of goo and then reform as the butterfly. So the butterfly coming out of the chrysalis is not the same thing that went in. There's been this complete transformation down at the cellular level. And it's almost like our whole society is that's what's happening. It's everything is melting away and fragmenting and dissolving, and a new structure is forming from those elements. So of course, if you're very attached to the old structure, you're going to feel quite disturbed by this.
yeah,
And particularly, I think if you're part of the old power structure, you're probably trying to hold on, and
yeah.
you're probably trying to do all kinds of things to try and stop this melting away process from occurring. And I think that helps to explain some of the wars that are going on at the moment, which I
Yeah.
think are all part of this resistance to this kind of crossover between the new world and the old world. And we're right at the point where the two cross over and where the power structure, the old dominant structure, becomes less than half and the new one becomes more than half. And of course, that's the point of resistance. It's the
Yeah.
point also of tremendous promise, because if we actually move into this new world, I think it's going to be amazing. There are going to
Mm.
be fantastic freedoms and technologies, and it's going to be just something like,
I think
utopia.
your analogy is really good and helpful, Hardin. But you know, there's an incredible amount of fear in the world. And you mentioned to me earlier about what you get when you look on the internet and looking at the news. It's so negative, a lot of it, and it's sort of perpetuating people's fear. And I'm wondering if you had any thoughts on what one could or should do in terms of taking us to this butterfly time, this freedom time.
Yeah. Well, the trouble is this if you think of this struggle, this sort of power struggle occurring on the crossover between the new world and the old world, most of the struggle is in the form of information warfare. And so a lot of the things you see on the internet are part of information campaigns to try and keep us, for example, in a state of fear, to tell us that the world is going to be destroyed in one way or another, and get us to accept, solutions that are put forward by people in power, which might not be the best thing for us. I mean, the may or may not be a genuine problem, but is the solution actually the best thing to be that ought to happen? And I think in many cases the solution is really a kind of trap. It's an attempt to terrify people and take away their power by making them frightened. Instead of putting out futures that are hopeful, instead of trying to paint pictures of how it could be much better, most of the pictures you read in the media are telling us how bad it's going to be. And particularly younger people are getting terrified. They think, there's only a few years left and the whole world will be destroyed. And I think this is highly unlikely. That doesn't mean I don't take the issues seriously, because I think their environmental issues and so on are very important. But I also think that for example, the technologies to solve the environmental problems do exist. But unfortunately, they've been kept secret, most of them, because they have military significance and so on. So they haven't been revealed. And part of the struggle that's going on is that the new culture would reveal these technologies. And we would suddenly find that a lot of the things we've been worrying about were solved. But the old culture wants to prevent these from coming out, because they can continue to control the situation by pretending they don't exist.
Well, you control people with fear, don't you? That's the thing.
And the main thing is you tell them that it's a disaster, there's no solutions. And the governments are more or less saying this, there are no solutions. And I believe this is not true, because of the work I've done over the years. I've seen enough clues and in some cases direct evidence that these things exist, that I think this is just really misleading.
But I suppose for the point of this particular webinar, perhaps we can just say a few words on what the individual can do, because I think people feel very helpless at the moment. They get bombarded, as we say, with all this negative stuff. And I, like you, do believe that the future is going to be okay. I do not subscribe to Armageddon or anything like that. I just don't believe it. I don't intuitively feel it's true. However, I do think our species are going into a massive evolution. And it's interesting that you brought up the caterpillar thing, because in a sense, that's what we're evolving to, but we haven't got there yet. So I'm just wondering if you had any words about what an individual can take.
We have to actually step up to the plate and be willing to, if to the extent that it's a spiritual shift or a mental shift, we have to make the shift inside ourselves. And I think the primary one is to move away from fear. To move away from fear into hope. Which is a kind of faith or a kind of trust that it will be all right. And some people would say, well, that's a bit la-la. But I think if, for example, it is true that what you think and what you focus on actually has an effect on reality, perhaps your personal reality primarily, then it becomes ever more important. If you focus on the negative, then it's not going to go well. And if we're all focusing on the negative, it's going to be a problem. At the very least, it'll slow down the sort of thing I'm talking about. So a shift into positive, hopefulness, and yes, stopping yourself sliding away into a kind of despair is really important.
Well, of course, that's the work I've been doing pretty well all my life, and the work of insight and intuition. and fear is the greatest task to overcome. And I do feel that, and I say to people a lot, don't you realize you're safe? You're safe. Whatever happens, you are safe. And getting to that point of acceptance of where you are and who you are is so important. It releases a clasp, a sort of energetic clasp, and then you can move forward. I think all the things you said warrant further conversations than this short one today, Hardin. But I just think, well, if I can perhaps put this to you, and again, this is something I say to people, don't you realize what a privilege it is to be alive? Whatever your beliefs are, whatever your beliefs are, you're never going to have this life again.
Not this particular one.
No, and whatever your beliefs are,
to be alive to be alive at this particular juncture,
yes,
in the Earth's history, is extraordinary. I think that's why there are so many people in the world at the moment, because this is an amazing event that's occurring in our lifetime.
And the way we think, as you touched on, is so important, because that thought is an energy. And if people are thinking about fear and, Armageddon and stuff, that is perpetuating that stuff. And that's what people who want to control want. They want people to be like that so that they can control them. So, this is major conversations. But would you, because this is just a short one, Hardin, and we will, I'm sure, have you on again, would you like to finish with something that gives us hope?
Well, something that gives us hope. Well, I mean, the things I've been saying, really, I do believe that we are right on the threshold, of something amazing, and that if we look back in a few years, certainly by the early 2030s, if not before, we are going to, and we look back to this period now, it's just going to be a stunning change.
Yeah.
In particular, I think that we will have far more freedom as a species. It'll be a creative freedom. It'll be up to us to decide what to do with it, but we will be in charge of our own destiny in a way that we have not been, perhaps, for thousands of years. Open up a whole other topic.
In charge of our own destiny, that's a good one. And also taking responsibility for our lives and our thoughts and so on. Thank you so much for speaking to us today, Hardin. And I know we'll speak again. There's lots to talk about.
Okay, well, you're very welcome.
Thank you for listening, everybody, and see you soon.